Bridge Community Church. It's Andy here. I'm here in our beautiful church lobby on this Tuesday morning, and I'm bringing you another video sermon recap. If you tuned in online this past Sunday, you know Pastor Danny spoke in our sermon series called The People of the Way, as we're kind of walking through the book of Acts, and we're kind of examining the lives and how people act in light of the empowerment and the embodiment of the Holy Spirit in and through them. And this week we talked about Joseph the Levite, which, frankly, as somebody who reads the Bible, when Pastor Danny first said that, I thought, who is that? I should know who that is. Well, it turns out that we know him by his nickname significantly more than Joseph the Levite. His name is Barnabas, and it's a nickname given to him, and it means the son of encouragement. And Pastor Danny kind of walked us through that this wasn't just a cavalier nickname thrown at someone. It was someone who earned that nickname based on who they were and how they lived their life. Before the sermon really got going, Pastor Danny made sure we were on the same page, and he just really took some time to develop what does encouragement mean. If we're going to talk about this guy, Barnabas, and what it means to be a son or a daughter or a person of encouragement, we got to know what encouragement means. And so encouragement at its simplest form means that we inject or we give courage to someone. It's this idea of speaking out something in somebody where they begin to live their life with their head held high and their shoulders back, saying, you know what, I can do this. I see this in my own ministry a lot with kids, that oftentimes kids don't even know what they're really good at, and sometimes you're one of the first people to recognize it, and you get to say, hey, did you know that I can totally see that you are good at X, Y, and Z, and you can see they kind of stand up a little taller. And so Barnabas, the son of encouragement, he gets that nickname because he's someone who speaks courage into people who are lacking it. In Acts chapter 4, we read this beautiful verse, and it's kind of our introduction to Barnabas. It starts in, I think, like the 30s, verse 32, something like that. And it says that the apostles, they gathered, and they were one in heart and in mind. They had this beautiful unity together. And Pastor Danny pointed out that is not something that we don't just do it. We don't just gather a group of people. I can imagine just maybe picking 100 people off the street here in our own city and getting them together and asking, are they unified in heart and mind? We would say no. And the reason is because our flesh cries out for things like pride and selfishness and self-seeking behaviors. And so in Acts chapter 4, when we first meet Barnabas, we find out that the people are gathered and they're one in heart and mind, empowered by the Holy Spirit. Their behavior and their outward action is humility first. And we find out they're starting to do some funny behaviors. Funny to us because in our mind we think, what? Why would they ever do that? They're selling their possessions and they're giving the money to kind of a common fund. Now sometimes these verses get misinterpreted, and I feel like Danny did a wonderful job pointing out that these things were not forced upon anyone. It wasn't a prerequisite to be part of the early church to sell your home and give the money away. What was a prerequisite is that you begin to live into a life of generosity. And so many people decided, you know what, if I want to live according to the call of God on my life, I need to sell some things, I need to give freely of my time, my energy, my treasure, my talents. And this is where we find Barnabas, because in chapter 4 of Acts, we're told that Barnabas sells a large field and he gives the money away. And Danny pointed out that to sell a large chunk of land in the first century is not just to get some money for a piece of property you own. It turns out that only 1% to 3% of the entire population are landowners. And land is the lifeblood of all life in the first century. It's where you grow crops and you raise animals. It's your social status. To own land immediately makes you somebody of very high social status. It's somebody with financial security. You can take out loans based on the value of the land. And so what Barnabas does as a son of encouragement is he says, you know what? I want to live a generous life. I want to be shaped by it. And so the first thing we learned about Barnabas is that he sells this piece of land. He gives the money to the apostles to serve the poor and the needy. Well, we really get a glimpse into Barnabas and how he got this nickname, son of encouragement, in Acts chapter 9. And the story picks up like this. It's Paul had been this terrible persecutor of Christians. He had been throwing them in jail. He had been advocating for even killing them. And he has this radical conversion experience, and he decides he's going to follow Jesus. But he encounters a big problem because his old partners, the Pharisees, they want nothing to do with him. In fact, they kind of want to cast him out or even kill him to get rid of him. They can't believe, how could you be on our side so staunchly and zealously and then turn on us? But the opposite is also a problem because the early Christians had heard about Paul. He was violent and vengeful. And they say, we don't want that guy around. And they're suspicious whether he really knows Jesus. They're suspicious maybe he's like trying to infiltrate their ranks to do something bad. Well, it turns out in Acts chapter 9 that Barnabas gets to know Paul. And on behalf of Paul, Barnabas goes to the apostles and says, look, everything that he's told you about his conversion and who he is true. You can trust him. You can take him in amongst yourselves. And so Paul is accepted in, and we know what happens next. He goes on to become one of the greatest evangelists in human history. He preaches the gospel to unknown lengths of time and places and everywhere. He just goes everywhere, and he writes more than half of the New Testament. And so Barnabas holds the keys as an encourager. He speaks courage for Paul, and he endorses Paul. The sermon kind of wrapped up, and Pastor Danny gave us 3 takeaway points. And I think that they belong to Barnabas in the book of Acts, but I think easily we can read ourselves right into this. The first takeaway was this, is that Barnabas is an encourager. That you and me, we hold power. As followers of Jesus, we hold power with our words and our actions and our deeds. We hold power to speak courage, to lift people up, to help them stand a little stronger, to help them see that they are gifted and talented. They are one of a kind, and God created them with a purpose. And so Barnabas was an encourager, and we can be encouragers too. The second takeaway that Pastor Danny left us with was Barnabas didn't just show up and become this person. He was shaped by a lifestyle, and his lifestyle was shaped by generosity. Danny pointed out that there's this mystery in the Bible, and it's not just in Acts, it's throughout, that generous people who give things away freely, give away their time and their treasures and their talents, they are often infinitely blessed by God. And we see this in Barnabas, that Barnabas was shaped by generosity. It was just who he was. It wasn't something he did, it was who he was. And you and me, we can be people of generosity. We can be shaped to look more and more like Jesus every day if we follow him in that way. The third takeaway was this, and I love this piece. It's that Barnabas was an endorser. Barnabas bridged the gap. He filled the gap for Paul to have access with the apostles, where 2 groups of people, the Pharisees wanted nothing to do with Paul and the Christians wanted nothing to do with Paul. Barnabas looked in and said, you know what, Paul is telling the truth. I know this guy, I've taken the time, and I'm going to endorse him by using my influence and my position to say, yes, he belongs. And I love this idea that we can be endorsers of people. We can say, you belong. Even if the world has told you you don't, you belong, and I will walk with you, and I will lead you to a place of belonging. Well, this is going to wrap up this week's video sermon recap. If you're in a bridge group, I can't wait to hear about how your discussions are shaped around this message about Barnabas, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Take care, friends.